Now we are going to examine ions in the periodic table. You have seen how atoms in group 1 of the periodic table have 1 electron in their outermost shell or highest energy level and forms 1 plus ions, as the sodium example that we gave, where the sodium atom, which is in group 1, it forms a 1 plus ion. And we have seen that group 7 atoms, they have 7 electrons in their outermost shell and forms 1 minus ions. The group number, it gives the number of electrons in the outermost shell. So, how does the group number relate to the charges on the ions formed from the atoms? Sometimes the atoms reacting, they need to gain or lose 2 electrons to gain the stable electronic structure of a noble gas. Sometimes the atoms reacting need to gain or lose 2 electrons to gain the stable electronic structure of a noble gas. An example is when magnesium, which has the electronic structure as 282, 2 electrons in the first shell, 8 electrons in the second shell, and 2 electrons in the outermost shell, which is from group 2, reacts with oxygen, which has 2 electrons in the first shell and 6 in the outermost shell, which is from group 6. When these two elements, the magnesium and the oxygen, react, they form magnesium oxide, MgO. This is made up of magnesium ions with a double positive charge, which is Mg2+. Why? Because the magnesium atom, it loses 2 electrons to become Mg2+. And the oxide ions, which is O2-. Why? Because the oxygen element, it gains 2 electrons to become a stable ion, so it has O2- as its negative charge. It has a double negative charge. So you can say that when atoms form ionic bonds, then atoms from group 1, they form 1 plus ions. Atoms from group 2 form 2 plus ions. Atoms from group 3 form 3 plus ions. Atoms from group 4, they do not form ions apart from tin, Sn, and lead, which is Pb, at the bottom of the group, except for these two. And group 5 atoms, they form 3 minus ions, and group 6 elements, they form 2 minus ions, and finally group 7 atoms, they form 1 minus ions. If we look at the following example, which is another example of an ionic compound, is calcium chloride. Each calcium atom has 2882 electronic structure. It needs to lose 2 electrons, but each chlorine atom needs to gain only 1 electron. So if one calcium atom needs to lose 2 electrons and each chloride needs to gain only 1 electron, this means that 2 chlorine atoms react with every 1 calcium atom to form calcium chloride. So the formula of calcium chloride is CaCl2. So each chloride will gain 1 of the electrons lost by the calcium. That's why we need 2 in order to both of them to hold the lost electrons from calcium. And by that, they achieve the stable noble gas structure of elements.